Hello everyone. So I just wanted to make a video about how the Palestine situation has an impact on everyone. And this is going to be a slightly longer video. I'm sorry about that, but you can, fast forward or 2x or whatever you want to do. But let's go through a few things. The first thing we need to highlight is this is not a Muslim-Jewish war. This is a war between Zionism and a civilian population. It will be the same anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, you're Jewish, you're Christian. The same circumstances anywhere in the world would have to have the same reaction. Okay? Now, the biggest problem that we're facing at the moment is the lack of consequences. The fact that a population or a government can do this with no recourse because of the impact that they have on the people making decisions. Whether that be through money, through blackmail, through, there's several things. So the question is, what now? What are the options and what are the possibilities after this happens? If Israel takes over Gaza and if there's a ceasefire and Palestine becomes its own independent state. So the first option is Gaza's taken over. Now let's go from a Western perspective. I don't think that a younger Western generation would be able to put up with the idea that their governments helped support this kind of action, whether that be killing people, starving people, or displacing them from their country. And that has its own problems, because when you have a younger generation that doesn't, feel nationalistic towards their own country, they'll either be looking to leave. They're not going to be looking to improve anything. They're not going to be looking to do anything that favors this country or this government. And the long-term consequences are the government's going to begin, collapsing wherever that may be in the West. And after that collapse, obviously there's going to be more control. There's going to be higher taxes. It's just going to go deeper and deeper into what we define now as just modern slavery. The alternative is Palestine becomes its own independent state. Now, this is all, hypothetical, but this would mean the collapse of Israel. Because when you have people who dedicate their entire lives to settling, living, trying to take land in the West Bank, trying to take Gaza, trying to, plan their futures and everything, you've probably seen videos online. And all of a sudden you can't take over a tiny strip of land, the plan for Greater Israel becomes impossible. If you can't take over a small strip of land with 2 million people, how are you going to take over the Greater Israel, which includes countries like Lebanon, it includes Saudi Arabia, it includes Egypt, it includes Jordan, it includes Syria? How are you going to take all that when you can't take a tiny strip of land? So it's almost inevitable that Israel would fail if that were to happen, which is why it's very unlikely that they would back down at this point. And not even to mention that the war, for example, with Iran, how many civilians across all these regions would be killed, and how many civilians in Iran, and if there's something nuclear, then how would that affect the countries in the region, including, for example, Qatar, where the water supply would be destroyed if there was a nuclear attack on Iran. The other problem is Zionists are already less accepted around the world. You've seen what's happened in Spain and Greece, for example, stopping the cruise ship. You've seen what's happened in Italy, people getting kicked out of cafes and restaurants. So Western populations are just not putting up with it. Now, how will those people react when their governments take it lying down and accept what's going on? It's a significant problem. Now, the other problem with Israel taking over Gaza specifically is now this sets a precedent. So now anywhere around the world, if there's a country that's unhappy with its population, the only thing they need to do is ally themselves with Israel or the US, and they can do whatever they like. So you have now, for example, Muslims in India. being prosecuted by the government and their beliefs. And let's put this line by the government and their beliefs. And if this is allowed to continue, that would basically give them the green light to say, so long as you're allied with us, which India is, and is very supportive of what's going on in Palestine, you can do whatever you like. So how would that impact that region of the world? So there's one option where everything's allowed to happen, and then there's one option where surrounding countries get involved, and then there's a regional war in the Far East. That's another option. Now, if Israel was to accept a ceasefire and it stays that way, how would that affect everything else? So if you're, like we said, if you're a settler and you dedicated your life to this and all of a sudden you can't take it over a tiny strip of land, you'll now think, okay, I'll just leave, because most of them are dual nationals. So I'll just leave and go back to where I came from. I'll go back to my actual home country, which a lot of them are Europeans and things like that. Some of them are Arabs. That's a different story. But a lot of them are Europeans. They have, the ability to leave. And if they do leave, the population in the area, by the way, in the area at the moment is 7 million Arabs, which is 2 million in Gaza, 3 million in the West Bank, and 2 million Arabs in Israel, and 7 million Jews. So as the Jews start to leave, the Arabs will become, by default, the majority, and in turn be able to take over the country legally, with or without violence. By the way, this is excluding violence. So, I mean, there was a quote by Joe Biden that said, "If there was no Israel, we would have to invent it." And that kind of tells you the West's stance on the situation. Their stance is Israel is a very valuable tool in the Middle East. The Middle East is a very special case in the world. They're very resource rich, and they're very human resource rich. If there was no intervention and this region united, they would easily be a global superpower. They have no problem. They're all multilingual. They're in the middle of the world in terms of trade. They have unlimited resources if you include Africa, North Africa, all these places. And they have unlimited people resources. So they can never be allowed their independence. You always need something to maintain the chaos in the Middle East, and that is Israel. So the question is, what now? I don't particularly believe Israel would back down, or the West would back down, because the risk is too high to all of their existences. But I also believe that them not backing down will also result in their internal collapse. That's just my personal opinion. And in the meantime, I think there are countries around the world that are happy to maintain human rights and things like freedom of speech, while also opposing what Israel's doing. And those will remain havens as this process goes on. And I think those countries will see a large Western population, especially of younger people, going there and settling there, and I think it's going to have a large impact on the way the world is at the moment and how the world is going to be in the future. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Obviously, comment, like, whatever you need to do. And yeah, thank you for your time. Bye.